welcome back to the channel, guys. This week we're painting Highland infantry.
The 92nd will advance. Please heard, McClellan!
Has Wellington nothing to offer me but these Amazons?
I don't know about you guys, but I love that film. Can never get too much of it. So I'm going to be concentrating on the Black Watch and the Gordons today. As far as the tartan, just wait and see what I do for that. Might not be quite what you're expecting. So for the red tunics, I use System 3's Crimson. This is a craft paint more than anything. It's not a big brand name. But it was cheap and it actually does the job quite well, so you don't always need to go for the more expensive ones. Anyway, so when painting the red, I found don't just go over every single area. On miniatures this size, pick out the areas that are red, because red is one of those colours which if you're trying to go over it with white and things like that, you're going to have issues. So just pick out the arms and the visible red uniforms. Do not go overboard, that's the key. I'm not sure if anyone's seen the adverts for the new Napoleon film, Ridley Scott's one. Yeah, they just came out, so by the time this video gets released, it's probably might even be out at the cinema, who knows. But I'm quite excited to see it. The advert does seem to have a few errors, let's just say, in historical accuracy, but hey, it's a historical epic. Ridley Scott usually does good films, so I'm hopeful that he will have done a pretty reasonable job on it. I understand that they're covering pretty well the whole period from the early 1790s all the way through to Waterloo, so it must be quite an epic one that they're to actually have the sort of the vision to try and do that. So definitely be interesting. Let me know what your thoughts are below, whether you think it's going to be good, whether you think it's going to be bad, what you think. Maybe they should have concentrated on a smaller period, who knows. But still, looking forward to it. So as with everything, always get your source material. So I've got a book at home called The Thin Red Line. It's all about the British uniforms from about 1750, I think, all the way through to the late 1800s. So for the kilts of the Gordons, we're using a slightly lighter green there. Pardon me. And again, same as with the red. Be relatively careful. You don't want to get it in areas that you don't need it, so just take your time. I found that if I just sort of water it down a little bit using Flow Improver, then it gives me quite a nice finish. I do spray paint my miniatures in black and then I give them a white dry brush, a sort of zenithal. So if you water down your paints just slightly, they do work kind of like a contrast, and then once it dries you have that nice variation between highlight and low light within the colour. So definitely worth doing, and it saves time later on when you're trying to highlight colours if you even need to. I've found at this scale you really only need to do the minimal amounts of highlights if you use this technique, so definitely saves time. And then we're using the slightly darker German camouflage green from Model Colour for the Black Watch, but again exactly the same process. Just take your time, avoid going over areas that you don't want a dark colour on. Water it down just slightly and you're good to go. I've always liked the Black Watch, firstly just because of their history as a regiment, but as far as the images are concerned, there used to be a game called, I think it was Battleground Waterloo, and there was one Prelude to Waterloo, and they had little images of the different regiments being represented and even now I can still remember the image for the Black Watch from when I was younger, and really loved that photo. Well, it wasn't a photo, it was a painting picture, but really cool. So next up, we're using grey, it's uniform grey, to do the greatcoats, which are rolled up on their packs, and the trousers for the officer. So again, as with the others, I just watered it down slightly. Then the cuffs and facing colours, so on the Gordons they have yellow, so this was system free process yellow. It's probably not the best yellow in the world, but I found if you add a little bit of matte medium to it, when you're watering it down, it actually works quite nicely. As you can see here, it picks out pretty well. So yeah, not a problem, and again, cheap craft paint. And then the cuffs and facings for the Black Watch are blue. So again, nice and easy. Just got to take your time. That's the main thing with small miniatures, take your time so that you don't splat paint where you don't want it. And if you do, don't be afraid to quickly get a different brush with water and just quickly go over that area to get rid of the paint. So for flesh, still using Tamiya colour, flat flesh. Does the job, just need to make sure that you have either flow improver or matte medium there to mix it with, otherwise it will dry out pretty quickly. I have heard and seen people use wet palettes. I've not used one, I've not taken the dive yet. If any of you have, let me know in the comments below whether you would advise using one, whether you think they're worth it. Yeah, because I am interested, but just haven't got around to it. So yeah, be interested in your thoughts. So the sharp-eyed of you may notice that I do the hands and I do the faces, but I forget to do their legs at this stage, so I had to go back in later on in the process just to finish off the legs. Easy mistake to make. I don't often go around painting men's legs. But yeah, just make sure you have a nice fine detailed brush when you're doing this, and then you can't go too far wrong. Also, if you're painting with the sprue, which I find to be an easier method, you can sort of prop the legs of the sprue, let's just say, against the table, your support hand, and it makes it a lot more stable for when you're painting. So the muskets and the packs, as always I like to use a slightly lighter brown, and so in this case we're using Game Colours Leather Brown. As I've said in most of my other videos, if you're painting smaller miniatures, it pays to probably use a slightly lighter colour than you would ordinarily on a larger miniature, just because you want them to stand out. If you go for just dark colours, you might not notice them so well at distance, so using a slightly lighter colour works nicely, especially when you use the wash in the next couple of stages to dull it all down anyway. But yeah, with the brown, just gave it a little bit of a water down again using the flow improver, and it just works nicely as a bit of a contrast. Then we do all the metal work, so in this case it's mostly just the bayonets and the barrels and the mechanisms. Game Colour Silver. I find it works very nicely. A little bit bright to start with, but again, once you get to the stage of putting that a wash all over the miniatures, it just dulls it down. And yeah, looks nice. So the ammunition boxes, or ammo pouches, cartouche boxes. If anyone knows specifically what they're called, please let me know. I would call them cartouche boxes, but for those I use game colour black because it comes out slightly gloss and looks like leather basically, so that's what I go for here. Then we've got the bread bags, which are game colour bone white. So it is quite nice to put these sort of lighter colours in on the miniatures because it just picks out a little bit and gives them a bit of point of difference. Now we're back to the good old white belts. I have to say, after having done the British line infantry, my hand was definitely a lot stabler this time, and yeah, I found these guys a lot easier to do. I think I must have picked up the knack doing the last ones. So again, just take it nice and easy, nice fine detail brush. Keep the paint slightly damp. You don't want it to be wet because otherwise it'll run, but you need it to stay nice and easily flowable. Just keep enough on the brush, don't put too much on. And then take your time. On the roll mats, again, just put your little marks on there. Roll mats, greatcoats, sorry. Just the straps to hold them in place. Also remember the socks and the bead around the headdress has a white strap, which will later on have the red dash marks. All of the water bottles done in magic blue. Again, nice pop of colour just to stand out. And if anyone knows why the British chose blue for their water bottles, I'd be quite interested. I'm glad they did because it's a cool colour. But yeah, wonder why they were blue. So at this stage I decided I'd try and do the tartan. I know the Black Watch had a bit of blue in theirs. Gave it a little bit of a try and realised, you know what, at this scale it doesn't actually show. So I stopped and then went back just to doing bits of white strapping on the water bottles. So then we've got the red and white pattern for the socks and headdress, and we use game colour dead white and system free crimson. So again, I use that really fine detail brush and just dotted ever so often across all of them just to give them the effect. When I say very fine detail, I mean this was a fine detail brush which I've had for about 7 years, and it's down to only about 6 hairs left, so it's very, very fine detail. And it's a good little brush for intricate bits and pieces. Again, with these, just take your time and just use the minimal amount of paint that you have to. Then for the buckles, cap badges and bronze work, we use bright bronze from Game Colour. I always like this stage because I know I'm basically at the end of the painting process, and there's just something about putting the bronze on that just finishes them off, and you know that your miniatures look finished at that stage. Up until this point they might look good, but there's still just something missing, and this just finishes them off nicely. And there we have them. So we've got the Black Watch on the left and the Gordons on the right. So I enjoyed painting these a lot. Yeah, the more I'm painting the sort of British forces, the easier they're becoming. Anyway, hope you guys really enjoyed it. Take some tips away. And yeah, please leave any comments you have down below. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.